We started out as competitors, but what we didn't see coming was love, partnership, and two babies.
We started out as competitors, but what we didn't see coming was love and partnership.
And two babies.
I was ready to shut down my business, but the person who saved it was the man I once saw as a threat.
I was ready to shut down my business, but what I didn't see coming, sorry. I know, right? What I didn't see coming was the first one. The
Do you
person
want me to say again?
Say it again.
I was ready to shut down my business, but the person who saved it was the man I once saw as a threat.
I was ready to shut down my business, but the person I once, oh
That's okay.
God, the person who saved.
The person who saved it.
I said, take this is bad.
But whatever comes through, do you know what I mean? Around this issue, it doesn't have to be word for word.
I'll keep it organic to my language then. That would make it easier.
Yeah, easy.
Oh, sorry, you're not going to repeat it now.
I can do it. I was ready to shut down my business, but the person who saved it was the man I once saw as a threat.
I was ready to shut down the business, but the person who saved it was someone I saw as a potential threat.
If you told me that my fiercest competitor would one day become my husband,
if you told me that my fiercest competitor would one day become my husband,
when we stopped fighting each other, we found everything we were really searching for.
Once we stopped fighting each other, that's when we found everything that we were searching for.
It wasn't just the business that changed, it's how we saw ourselves, our work, and each other.
In a way, it wasn't that the business changed. More importantly, it's how we changed how we look at ourselves and also each other.
Peace didn't come from winning. It came from surrendering the need to compete.
peace didn't come from winning. It came from surrendering the need to compete.
So good, so good. Oh, this is just gold. I can't wait to do the reel. Okay. All right, so now we'll go into the interview section and you can tell your story and then we'll chop that up as well. Hi, and welcome to another interview for the Backyard Peace Project Anthology, Finding Peace Through Struggle. And today we have an amazing partnership, both professionally and personally. Their story will blow you away. It's a gorgeous story, gave me goosebumps. I absolutely loved it. There should be a film made about it. Tom and Sanja, thank you so much for joining me. Thank you. I know that you run multiple businesses. I know that you've got so many projects going on, and I really, really appreciate you. Number one, sharing your story with the anthology because it's such a powerful story. And number two, carving out the time to be here today.
Well, thank you, Cathy. It's a powerful book idea. And when you asked us to put our chapter in and ask us to tell our story about how we kind of found peace with ourselves and each other, we were just really happy to be a part of the anthology family.
Yeah, and we've been sharing this wherever we go. We love telling our story, but being able to put it on a platform that can broaden the concept and actually share some of the learnings is very exciting.
And I love what you bring to this because you bring the professional and the personal. And you're both fierce individuals. You're both really strong. You're both amazing professionals. And what I love is the vulnerability of how you tell the story, because Sanja, you went through a life-changing moment, a really big time in your life where things weren't firing for you, even though everything you planned and you'd worked so hard for. And Tom, you really pushed yourself through some resistance to enter Sanja's world, knowing that you actually were quite fierce competitors at the time. So can you both speak to sort of how that unfolded? Because it's actually a beautiful story, but it's also a powerful one.
Oh, thank you. And you're right that I had all the plans under the sun. It's funny that saying, man plans, God laughs. It was definitely like that. I had so many grand, audacious, and bold goals, which COVID laughed at. to start with. There was quite a almost career-ending activity there, which many people can relate to. But when I initially started the business, I approached it with this mentality of wanting to have a positive relationship with competitors. And I reached out to all of them in the state that were registered at the time. Crickets, didn't really get anything out of anyone. So forged on my own, and COVID almost ruined us. The business, 100% loss. Gathering of people was illegal, which kind of sucks for a public speaking coach. So that was hard. And then some health issues with my family, and a lot of pressure there. And then health issues for me as well, where my fertility overnight due to stress disappeared. And so I found myself in an awkward position where I'm single, zero income, caring for my family, and I might have no chance of having children, and I did not know what to do. And so my gut instinct was to just crumble, implode, and shut down. And it was that's when I sort of saw a beacon of hope when I met my competitor.
And it's funny, we both have like similar but opposite experiences. And I guess what's unique about our book being it's a double act is that you get to see the story from two different sides of the fence. A bit like if you've ever seen Pulp Fiction, it's like everyone converges in the middle and at the end. And for us, in every sense of the word, we found really good stable middle ground where we were better together than apart. And it's not a story where it's like we fell madly in love and then we figured it out. Like it was definitely the peace with ourselves came first, and then love sort of followed. I think, and had we not done that, it would have never been allowed to enter. It's funny, like the business transformed a lot, but the real transformation had to happen with us internally first, and then with each other, and then the business transformed, and everything changed from there.
Yeah, the love definitely came second, because we had that conversation with a whiteboard. This is what you do. This is what I do. Let's collaborate as competitors before any of the rest of the feelings came much, much later.
And what was interesting is so Sanja goes from having a very a high point in her business, and then COVID happens, and then it's this domino effect from there. And I meet Sanja at her lowest point, and for me, I kind of had not so much a low point, but I was like unhappy, and I had really wanted to start this dream job, and it had taken me years and years and years to finally get the courage up to do it. And I felt like when I quit my very safe job as a lawyer to do it, I felt like I only had one chance. Otherwise, I'd have to go crawling back. And so now that I had it, there was a lot of resistance for me to not be distracted. Like by that, I sort of had tunnel vision. I sort of had my own way I wanted to do it. It was my baby. It was my dream.
Yeah.
And it's funny, like in our story, just a few things happened that just I don't think they happened so much because I was wise enough to know what to do. I think I got reason why we're able to have such a lucky ending was because we got really lucky. We had people in our network, mutual friends and things like that, who knew both of us, but we didn't know each other at the time. Who I think knew, because they knew both of us, they knew that we would make a good pair, and so they really twisted my arm.
Collaborators, that is.
Yeah, as collaborators, they really twisted my arm in particular to say, don't do this alone. Don't be stubborn-headed. Don't be a competitor. Don't be cold. Just give this person a go. And like, I don't think that voice was inside my head at the time, being a young business owner. But because I took that advice and I gave it a go, all of a sudden it worked out really well for us. And now, having lived it, it's really internalized in our heads that instead of fighting yourself and other people, you should be fighting for some common goal.
Yeah.
And that's sort of something I've learned in business, that it's okay to be a competing business with other people. I think the question turns to, are you competing like separately because that's the best way to innovate and grow, an iron sharpens iron relationship? Or are you just apart from each other because you're stubborn, like are you fighting yourself and the other person, in which case that's like two things eroding each other, and so if you've got a common world good, or a common goal you're both heading towards, it makes more sense to try to reach out than it does to try and outrace.
Correct.
You say lucky, Tom. My romantic heart says destiny, but we'll talk about that later. So each of you have been through this, and I love that you touched on this, Tom, this inner work, this inner peace that you have to do. And Sanja, this wasn't the first time that you'd had to reinvent yourself, because originally your career was in ballet.
Correct. I'm a ballerina initially. So I had a career set from the age of 3. That was it. Came from a book when I was learning English. My parents gave me books to learn English, and one of them had a fairy in it. Dead set at 3. That's my life. I'm going to become a fairy. And so they put me in ballet because that was the next best thing. And it was absolutely the best thing I ever did. Fantastic foundation for me. Unfortunately, I was injured. And so through injury, much later in life, after 17 years, through injury, I had to find a way to use these skills differently. And I mean, what other skill do you have? I mean, go to a boardroom, try an interview as a ballerina. I can pirouette. How else can you use that in corporate world? I had no idea. And so it came out of a conversation with someone who was in the crowd at a show and said, gosh, I wish my team was as confident as you are on stage. And that's where it kind of clicked. I'm going, I don't need to teach pirouettes. He's asking for confidence for his team. I could teach that. That's something I lived and breathed on stage. And generally speaking, I didn't see a lot of people in the market that were talking about the benefit of performing in the corporate world and being critical about how we perform and present. So I'm like, I could teach that. And boom, started my first business, pivoting, pirouetting out of ballet and into the corporate business consultancy world.
And what sort of challenges did you face, guys? Because we all go through things where we're following the intuition, we're taking the next step, we're taking the advice, we're listening to our friends, all of those sort of things, because that sort of intuitive pull that brings you. But are there moments in your story where you doubted yourself, where you felt scared, where you've had to sort of have a word with yourself in order to keep moving forward?
Oh, there were tears, at least on my part. When I started this collaboration, I cried out of fear.
Sanja and I had
He cried, he just didn't tell me. I'm kidding.
we all had our own like hard questions that needed answering, both initially with ourselves and then with each other. And I'm trying to now, in reflection, think about what the secret sauce was that I can share with other people in that. And this chapter's helped vacillate that ideas and get them out. So from my head into something more tangible. So from my side of things, my first interaction with Sanja was online, in the sense that when I quit my job as a lawyer and I started a public speaking business on my own, the first thing I started doing was looking at who the competitors were, and so I'm like, who else is in Adelaide is doing this sort of thing? And Talent Academy's website came up, and I had this document called competitor analysis, and I started writing notes next to everyone. I'm like, this person specializes in this person offers that. For Talent Academy, it was like, note to self, when I get a website together, it has to be better than this one, because this one is like the best website of all the ones I've seen so far. It ranks well, it's clear, offers lots of stuff. Like, wow, I have to scale that mountain kind of thing. And so that was my first thing of Sunny. It was very much that posture of, right, that's the enemy and I have to defeat it, or that's the
which is common, actually. Most people look at competitors that way.
And I think what a human being, in reflection upon why did I think that and not the way I think now? I think one thing that's really true of peace, really generally, is that in order for humans to go to war with each other or to become competitors or fighty with each other, you first have to go through a place of taking the human and taking away the humanity. You got to objectify people, I think, before you can fight them. Otherwise, I think there's a very inherent instinct in us all not to hurt our fellow person.
Yeah.
And so you often see when wars or genocides or other nasty things break out, even if it's not as extreme as war, but it's like this sort of conquering behavior, is that you have to say they're the other side. Like they're not, then we're not one anymore. It's like they're over there or over here. And you have to put labels in order to then justify the conclusion of, and that's why I must defeat them, and so I wasn't looking at this person as a collaborator or a friend or someone. I saw them, I think the labels I would have put on them are really confessions rather than a true diagnostic of that person. I was thinking, I don't want to reach out to this person because I've got good subject matter and they'll steal it. And that's really a confession that I'm in fact a thief, when it comes to, I'm taking this person's website and I'm going to do it +1, I'm going to add to it. And when I started realizing that the words that were coming out of my mouth and the actions that were coming out of my body were more confessions than true clear-headed analytics of things, and that I was just trying to keep people at distance because there was something that I wasn't dealing with myself to make them instead reach out an arm to bring them in. I realized I had a scarcity mindset where I needed it all for me. But when I switched that to an abundant mindset, I realized that there was enough for everyone and that we can all do better with each other. I think that's the biggest switch that flipped in my head between how I used to think versus how I think now.
And for me, it felt like there's definitely an ego attached with our business when we start it, when it's our baby and we raised it. Because I was 12 years in. He was brand new in business. He had this, he calls it a brand new, what do you call it?
Bouncing baby boy business.
Bouncing baby boy business, just like a brand new little thing, a bundle of joy that had just arrived. I was 12 years in, so we were established. We had an office, a suite of offices in Perry Street. We had a team. Everything was on trajectory to grow really, really well. We were already working nationally. And so when something hit us that wasn't my doing, like it was, COVID made us implode. When something like that hit us so hard, I felt even more protective of my baby, even more like, oh, I've got to keep whatever I've got. And it was really, really hard having looked at the history, the proven history of I've done this well, I've grown this business really well on my own. Who are you, brand new in the market, hasn't even run a business for a year, to come in and tell me anything? You know what I mean? Like it was a wrestle for me, huge wrestle. And I had to think really critically, and this is part of what the tearful process was for me, was the tearful awareness that I had to let go of the ego I had so closely tied to my business and realize that, as my business mentor always said, I am not the smartest person in the room. There is always going to be an opportunity for growth when you collaborate with smart people. And so I had to let go of that ego, and that definitely resulted in some tears. And it sort of made me think, okay, well, if this is my skill set, what is a collaborative, complementary skill set that will help me rather than something I've always done? So enter the theater bug for my whole life, having been a ballerina, and the tax lawyer, complete opposite worlds that had different methodologies, different formulas that actually added value to each other. And that's exactly what made us grow to what we are now, a team of 10.
No, and what I love about both of you guys is the deep self-reflection, because that takes courage. Like most of the time we go around, we like to look at the bits that are sparkly and sunshiny and rainbow encrusted, but we don't like to look at the dark bits that we're pretending aren't there. And for you to really get your breakthrough, it was a really honest self-reflection of, what is the truth of this? Really, this is the story I'm telling, but what is the actual truth of this? And that's what brought you the big breakthrough. And I also felt as well, like, all of my dealings with you, you're very much your own people. You're very strong individually, and you know who you are and you know what you bring to the table. And I feel like that's made your collaboration personally and professionally so successful, is because you've got a very strong sense of who you are within those partnerships.
Oh, absolutely. We really believe strongly, and Tom will elaborate on this, really believe strongly in the personal brand associated with the business as its own entity. And that was part of the detachment, painful as it was, the detachment of my ego from the business. It's not my baby, it's its own entity, it's got its own legs, and developing your personal brand so that, you know, this is my skill set, this is your skill set. Working together is why we are stronger. And we keep working on building those personal brands. Everyone in our team has one, and he'll talk about the value of that.
I think one of the big points for me was it's funny, I remember how quick the timeline of all of these things happen. They all happen so fast in under 12 months.
I'm going to read the chapter. It was very quick.
That I mentioned when I was talking before, like I try to think critically about how did I used to think and what sort of mental models and formulas that I used to have to arrive at conclusions I just wouldn't agree with now. And so if we call that growth and wisdom, like what's different? Like what's the difference between past Tom and future Tom? And I think one thing I admire about past Tom in that 12-month period where I met Sanja was the fact that it was very like, you know, living life entirely from his heart. And I've tried to keep the best bits of my past self and not become jaded, you know, as I get older. So I don't want to forget about that version of me. I want to keep them in my like identity of who I am, and just try to take the best bits of all the versions of me as I've gone.
Yeah.
And so, like, if I think about how quickly past Tom moved and he was living life really by his heart, he quits a career he spent 10 years getting in May. He meets Sanja in June. He collaborates with Sanja in July. He co-directs a business with Sanja in August. They start dating in September. He's ring shopping in October. He proposes in November. He's meeting her family in December. They're planning and canceling a wedding in January, and they're having it in February. And then come June the next year, their first daughter's born, almost on the anniversary of when they met.
Yeah,
Destiny,
wow.
I think, is your words. Is that right?
Yes, absolutely. My heart is all aflutter. I'm a big romantic. So yeah,
Which in
amazing.
itself is
And
a journey.
courage.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the courage that we both had to engage in, not just in having these critical conversations about collaborating together, but at the same time, those same the deep critical conversations were also about him joining my IVF journey. Like, hey, surprise, nice to meet you. Let's collaborate. I'm having a baby. Are you ready? It was a lot.
Amazing. So what would you want, guys, the biggest gift for people to take from your chapter in this book? What is the one thing that you really want people to have that light shining in their life? What would that be?
I think is to know whether you're fighting yourself or someone else for a good cause or not. I think fighting is, I use that word in big bracket, like big, bunny that is, yeah, apostrophes. Because I believe fighting is a good thing. If you're fighting for something, you're fighting because you're putting effort and attention and all yourself into it. Working might be a better word, but fighting is often what the word people use. But here's the thing: is that you want peace as well, and so that's a square that needs circling. Like fighting and effort and drive, but also peace. And so the big distinguishing factor between whether we were better together or apart would have been in business in particular. If we had separate businesses, would we have been making the world a better place? Would we have been making a better product, more sustainable, because we were both in the market pushing each other to our limits in a healthy kind of way, Or if we were, a lot of people shouldn't mix business and pleasure or family and business and things like that, because what needs to be done often can't be done when you can't treat your family, like honestly, or the way, it'd be hard to fire your spouse, right?
Not that he's tried.
And that might, for some people, be a way of making sure that honesty and all the things you need to have good peace, like, don't happen because it's too entangled. And so everyone's going to have their different story, but our story worked out like this: that I think we were very typical business people who both looked at our businesses like a baby that was ours. But businesses aren't babies. Babies are babies. Businesses are just a thing that you pour, your effort and your time into to make the world a better place. And so what really switched for me is when Sanja had a party that I thought was just a party. It turns out to be Talent Academy's closing down so I can focus on my health and family. It's a shutdown party. It was the first time in the whole time I'd known Sanja that I saw myself in her. And I think a lot of people fail to see themselves or a version of themselves in their competitor, because we all should be able to do it because we're all humans. You should be able to see the human of you and the human of someone else. And so when I had thought, I've had this idea for a business since I was 13 years old, and it was my dream business that I was too afraid to do because I wanted a safe and stable profession. I finally had the courage to do it, and I was 11 out of 10 happy having started my dream business. And I saw someone else's dream business have to shut down because life was just too cruel.
Yeah.
I was like, I that if it happened to me, it would be the end of my life, sort of thing. And so I felt compelled to empathize and I feel the need to help and save that person. And so then that was a big glass shattering moment for me. And I think other people might, like, they need to go through that process. I think of, like, is the reason why I'm fighting myself for other people is because there's just something that isn't I think is there isn't really there.
Mm.
I'm not seeing, like, can I see myself in the other person?
Yeah, when you remember that humanity and what you're looking at there, it can make you see things differently. And for us, it resulted in us looking at the business and each other really critically. I wish that others in the market would look at competitors differently, because, you know, that saying about going fast versus going far, I definitely opted for the option to go far together rather than fast alone. And going far together as a theory was something we talked about. We had a whiteboard, we had ideas, but when we put it into practice, it absolutely worked. Doesn't make it easy, but it absolutely worked. When it been able to grow ever since, go national, go international, build a team who technically are all competitors because the model worked. And I wish that more in the market would see that the process is fruitful, trying, and it's definitely an area of growth. But when you come to peace with the concept, when you come to peace with the idea of removing the toxicity and the negativity that comes with competition, it can be the most fruitful soil you ever invest in.
I've got one more point that I can tell fairly quickly, is that I think a core special ingredient to this whole thing, because when we're having, you have to win a series of conversations with yourself and the other person. And I think it all came down for us to good communication. I feel like even though our relationship, both in business and in life, went really, like, progressed very quickly, I think I'm really proud of the fact that we didn't take any shortcuts. I think some people might date, for 7 years and then or more, and then decide to engage, because I think the conversations that they could be having, they're not having because they're worried, or they're sort of just trying to keep what they've got instead of test to see if it's ready, for the next thing. And so we didn't have the luxury of time, but we did have the luxury of being both, like, communication experts. And so the first time we dated was a really funny date where Sanja is sitting opposite a table and going, "Okay, you seem like a nice boy, but just so you know, my fertility is really bad, and I've already got, like, a donor, sample coming over from overseas, and I'm going to pursue a single motherhood whether you're around or not. And so if you would like to stick around, which I would like very much, that's a lot for anyone to deal with. So there's the door, no hard feelings."
Literally how I said it, like, no offense, there's the door, have fun.
And I said, "Well, I'm 30. I'm actually in the market for my forever person. So should we just have a talk?" And there's a really funny comedy sketch. I can't remember where it comes from, where there's a husband and wife. They're just courting each other immediately. And they're just in dot points transacting with each other, going, "All right, how many kids? Like 5, 1, 4, 3, deal."
Done.
How many times do you holiday? 5 times, once, twice, deal.
It's pretty much how our conversations went, but they're right. They were very critical conversations.
Another thing that I think that made us get kind of lucky was because we were able to have this conversation where because we hadn't met each other for very long, we could have a conversation where we weren't afraid of losing each other. And so we just fast tracked all the things we had to say to get to a point of marriage, both in business and in life, without fear. And, obviously everyone has to be careful with how they treat their relationships. They don't want to say the wrong thing, kick themselves, and, ruin things. But we just had these very courageous, no holds bar conversations that were about, our things like our faith, our business philosophy, what we wanted in life, what our health concerns were, what our past traumas and all that sort of stuff were, what our non-negotiables were. And some people hold on to these things for years before they drip feed them to their partner. But we just had to get them all out on date one. And we were just like, wow, we didn't trip and fall over any traps.
Yeah. And it's true that the communication is the number one breakdown of most relationships, whether it's business or otherwise. And so having a foundation of strong, critical communication strategies is the best thing anyone can take away from this. And it definitely works for all backyard peace projects.
And what I love about what you guys have articulated there is, not losing each other, but not losing yourselves in it. And I mean, for Sanja, for you to stand as a woman and say, "This is my plan. This is really big. I understand that, but I'm doing it." It's pretty badass. And then Tom, for you to come up and meet and go, "I'll meet you there." That's pretty badass too. So it's a really beautiful story. And it's a story of power and protecting each other's sovereignty as well as your own. Like, I really love that about this whole chapter. So thank you so much for being part of this project. Thank you for taking the time today. We're absolutely thrilled to have you with us, and I'm sure your chapter is going to change lives.
Thank you so much. Absolute honor to be part of it. And I look forward to hearing what else comes from this, what the public does, and what your piece project is.
Thanks, Cathy. Thanks so much, everyone. We really hope that you enjoy our chapter, and I hope you enjoy reading it as much as we enjoyed living it and writing it.
Beautiful. Thanks, guys. And guys, we'll see you next time. Thank you for joining us.